afternoon. Good to see you. Good to see you. We're going to start in like 10 seconds. But before,
sorry, technical difficulties because we're old. We're just need a little bit of time to load the PowerPoint onto the screen. But in the meantime, so we all know you, yes. You all know us, yes. My name is Jessica. As a reminder, I'm from Vancouver, and Laurence.
I'm Laurence. I'm from French Canada. I'm from Quebec actually, so I speak French and English and a bit of Mandarin. Yeah, but we live in Beijing. We live in Beijing, and we're in Hong Kong.
So if you ever come to Beijing, feel free to stop by. But so we both work for Me2We. Everyone knows what Me2We is in this room. Yes. Do you guys remember pop quiz time?
What is Me2We? Catch this. Oh, you catch it. It's here. Okay, you got it. What is Me2We? Repeat after me.
It's a social enterprise.
Yeah, good. And what do they do with Free the Children? What's Free the Children? Learn about it. Okay. What is Me2We? Catch this.
Anna?
Me2We is an association that brings us to villages that are in need of different types of donations, such as healthcare or food.
Excellent.
Okay, so Me2We is a social enterprise. Yes, that's correct. And one of the big things that we do are volunteer service projects. So one of the HKI students actually went with us this past October during Peak Week to our to our village, our base in Hunan, China, called Golanyao, and it had some pretty photos of it on the PowerPoint, but it's not up yet, so it's okay. But it's one of the really great things, and I think you guys will know this from going on your own trips and going traveling, is that for that amount of time, so for 2 weeks, you immerse yourself in the different lifestyle and the different living standards of someone who's so radically opposite of what you experience every day, right? You kind of get to go outside your own bubble and experience what other people are living through. And what happens after trips like that usually is that students come away with it and they feel a multitude of emotions ranging from happiness to guilt. And what they can do with that emotion a lot of the time is that they turn it into actions of compassion and empathy. And they try to channel those emotions into doing something good for the community that they were just in, or for the community in general. For example, your school community here. So that's one of the things that we do. The other major thing that we do is leadership workshops, leadership workshops, and drama workshops, and team building activities, which we did with some of you guys over these last 3 days. And
would you like to see the pictures? I'm just asking.
Okay, so this is, I guess we don't need to film ourselves. So this is the village in Hunan. It's basically surrounded by mountains on all sides, so a lot like what you have here in Hong Kong, actually. It's populated by a local ethnic minority, so our students go there, they learn about the social issues that this local ethnic minority is facing in the bottom left corner, and they also visit the local schools and play with the children there. So Laurence and I are two very different people, but there's one thing in common that we strongly believe in. Okay?
And what is it?
It's that we're both really amazing.
But one of us is more amazing than the other.
It's me. And what we'd like you to do actually is, if you think you're amazing too, can you please stand up? I'm serious. If you think you're amazing, please stand up.
Everyone stand up. We all think you're amazing. Everyone stand up. Everyone stand up. Everyone at the same time stand up. Stand up. 5, 4. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Victoria, stand up. Stand up. Everyone's up. Good. Now look at us in the front, please. Thank you.
Make sure you're standing next to someone. If you're not standing next to someone, please move so that you're standing next to someone.
Yeah, you need to be standing next to someone. Do we have everyone?
Stand next to someone.
Excellent. Okay, now we will ask you to put your right hand up. Okay, good. Right hand down. Okay, let's do with the left hand. Left hand up. Left hand down. Excellent. Let's do it again with the right hand. Now, put your hand around someone's shoulder. You can make like a circle, you know? If there's no one, you can imagine your friend. Okay.
If your hand is not around someone's shoulder because there's no one standing to your right, then raise your left hand and put your hand around the other person's shoulder. So you should have both hands, or at least one hand, around someone's shoulder right now. So both hands around someone's shoulder, or at least one hand around someone else's shoulder.
You got it. Okay. Good. Next step. Next step is my favorite.
And keep the hands on the shoulder.
Keep the hands on the
Hands
shoulder.
on the shoulder.
Okay, 5, and then I'll say the next step. The next step, I want you to look at the person on the right in the eyes, right? And to have a little wink. A little wink.
Wink at the person.
A confident wink. A happy wink. Wink, 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 wink. Yeah, good wink. Oh, you can wink again. Oh, we got good. You are so good at this. Wink, wink, wink. Yeah, let me keep winking. Wink, wink, wink. Got it? Excellent. Okay, and then the last step.
Last one.
Last step. Please think for at least 5 seconds, and we want you to say something really nice to your friend. Excellent. All right. So I really like, since I'm a teacher, I really like to ask a question. Why did we do this? And it's not only to practice your winking, it's also
Very useful skill.
it's also because we want to make a beautiful segue to our theme today. That is the word empathy. We want to encourage you to communicate with the others. We worked all week long for 2 or 3 days. You worked for 3 days. We worked for 3 days as well. Yeah, I'm like about leadership, about team building. So now this short exercise is just to show you how empathetic and how emotions and communication is good in servicing. So, yeah. Okay, cool.
So what we like to do is that we like to think of the compliment that you just gave the other person to be a little dose of compassion, a little shot of compassion. It's a nice thing to do, right? It's not much effort on your part. It makes the other person feel good. Yes? Yes. And so what we'd like to do, what Lawrence and I would like to do with you today is share a couple very different stories about small actions that made a difference in the world, a very big difference for me. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to my lovely father. This is where you say, "Aww." Yeah. So this is okay. my dad. His name is Hung. He's turning 70 years old this year.
Happy birthday.
Oh, that's so young.
It's not until May, but thank you. And he's always been told that he has a baby face. So I took this photo last year, so he was 68 then. And he doesn't look much different now. But this is my father, Hung. I call him Benny, like Benny and the Jets. No, okay. It's an old song. So I call him Benny and the Jets. And I grew up thinking my father was born in 1947 in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. So I grew up thinking that my father was Vietnamese. My mother is Chinese, so that makes me half Chinese, half Vietnamese. I thought I was biracial. And so I did keep on thinking this, and I told all my elementary school friends, like, yeah, I'm half Chinese, half Vietnamese. Until one night when I was 12 years old, I was talking to my dad, and all of a sudden he's like, no, I'm not Vietnamese. I said, but you were born in Vietnam. He says, yeah, but I'm Chinese. So I've lived like a little bit less than half my life thinking that I was biracial when I was not. So obviously I then peppered him with questions. What do you mean you're not Vietnamese? And he goes on to tell me about his childhood, his adulthood, his journey to Canada. And that's what I want to share with you today. So it begins in the 1930s. Japan is invading China, or there's a threat of invasion from the north. And his grandparents flee China to Vietnam. They leave their sons and daughters behind. They go to Vietnam first, they establish a little bit of a community, and then they send for their sons and their daughters. So my father's dad was one of the people who went over. When my grandparents went over, they left their eldest daughter behind in China for reasons that we don't know. And so my dad, not even having been born yet, has already lost an older sister. When he is born in 1947 in Ho Chi Minh City, he is the third of 4 children. So he's got 2 older sisters and a younger sister. He is the only boy. Sorry, give me a minute. When my dad is a young child, around the age of 3 years old, his father passes away. So my grandma raises his 3 sisters and him alone. And what she does is she sells street food on the side, she sells food on the street in order to make an income, and she has enough money to send 1 child to school. And so my dad, being the boy, was chosen, obviously. But my dad he's not very book smart, okay? He's a terrible student. He he failed his tests all the time. He never did his homework. He would fall asleep in class. If he were in this room right now, he'd probably be at the back of the classroom texting on his phone or something. And so he, in a class of 60 students, he was in the bottom 20. And so,
Yeah, I was.
yes. But he was chosen because he was the boy in a family of 4 children, all of whom were girls. And so when he would go home from school, instead of helping out around the house, because he couldn't do anything in the house, he would burn the rice in the pot, and that was the simplest activity that my mom wanted him to help out with. He would go gamble in the alleyways after school with his friends, and then my grandma would chase him home with a tree stick. But when push came to shove, he was a very naughty kid, but when push came to shove in high school, he dropped out. And he went to go help my grandma sell food on the street. And in his free time, because he realized that there was no future for him in university or in high school, is that he started going to members in the community and learning about how to fix cars, like car engines. And so that's what he did in his spare time. Meanwhile, in the midst of all of him growing up in the 1950s and the 1960s, there's a civil war in Vietnam between the North and the South. Have you guys learned about the Civil War at all? Yeah. So my dad was in the South, so he lived in the part that was being aided by America. They were trying to install democratic values, and then the North was trying to install communist values. And so the rule at that time was that it was forced conscription. So once you graduate high school, you're supposed to join the army. And he didn't graduate high school. But when he came of the same age, he tried to avoid the army for a few more years. And so what happened was that my grandma was so afraid to lose him that she wouldn't let him out of the house. And so he became something of a vampire during those days. He could never go out during daytime, and so his skin was much lighter than other people. He was like a China doll. And ironically, it was when he was out in 1968, one morning, in the dawn, the sun had just risen, that it was his lighter skin that made him a reason for suspicion by the officers who were patrolling the area. And so he was approached, he was asked for his ID papers, he was hauled down to the station. They realized that he was 21 and not a member of the army, and they forced him into the army. And so he's in the army for 5 years. And meanwhile, my grandma is doing everything she can to save up enough money to buy fake ID papers. And she finally does in 1973, 5 years later. And she uses the money to buy papers saying that this now 26-year-old man is actually 16 years old. And it works. Miraculously, it works. And I'm pretty sure there's a little bit of like extra bribing for some army officers, but it works. He gets out of the army, and 2 years later, when he turns 18 again, right? We all wish, everyone over 18 in this room probably wishes they had that moment again. When he turns 18 again and is supposed to go into the army again, the war ends in 1975. It's a coincidence, it's miraculous timing. But the South loses, and he was a soldier for the South. And now the new government that's going around is persecuting all the soldiers who used to fight for the South. And so he goes into hiding. And life after the war is really different. Like his family can't make a living anymore, they can't do the same stuff that they used to. A lot of people are leaving. And in 1978, they hear about these boats that leave in the middle of the night. And they figure that anything will be better than Vietnam at that time. And so in 1978, they get on a boat in the middle of the night with 300 other refugees. It looks something like this. And they have to leave my grandma behind. They can't travel with her. There are 7 of them, so my dad has 3 sisters, 2 nieces and a nephew, the youngest one who's just a little baby at that time. They travel for about 5 days, and they end up at Pulau Bidong, which is a refugee camp in Malaysia. It's actually a tourist site today. You can go there and you can look around. They spend a year here. My dad wants really badly to go to America because he hears about America a lot. But the Americans are not accepting anyone without official papers, so passport, birth certificate, whatever. And he obviously doesn't have this after his time in Vietnam. After a year, he hears, oh, Canada's accepting people without papers. And he goes, no, I don't want to go to Canada. It's too cold. But eventually, after some persuasion, he makes that willing sacrifice to move to Canada. 3 months later, they arrive in Canada, and he is welcomed by Anne and Peter, who were the Canadian family who sponsored him over. They're ordinary citizens. They don't have, fantastically wealthy jobs. They don't have, a crazy good education. It was just at that time, the Canadian government was willing to match every refugee sponsored over by a private citizen. And so they decided to do it through their church. And so this is Anne and Peter. They brought my dad in and his family. They housed him in a small apartment. And actually, Anne and Peter had to provide financial assistance to my dad for 1 year. But my dad had to pay it back, so it was really more like a loan. My dad then went to go find work. He got work in a grocery store stocking stuff, but he didn't make enough money. He found work in an auto mechanic shop fixing car engines, but 1, he didn't speak any English, and 2, he didn't know how to operate power tools, electronic power tools, because they never had them in Vietnam, so he was fired. He says it with great satisfaction. And eventually he finds work in the Chinatown community at an auto mechanic shop, who teaches him how to use the tools, who teaches him some English, and he's able to become financially independent. He pays back Anne and Peter, but he realizes that what Anne and Peter gave him is not just money. It's compassion. It's empathy. Yeah? In that year, there are 60,000 Vietnamese refugees who went to Canada. In 2016, so last year, Syria, we accepted 40,000 Syrian refugees. And when you think about just like, there's 4 decades apart, and we accepted more 4 decades ago than we did now, even though it's an impressive number, it doesn't compare to what we were doing decades ago, right? Which is why I also think like, we need a lot more compassion and empathy today, like, in this world. So these are just some photos, like, I didn't think anything of it at the time, like an Asian family growing up with white grandparents. It was only until later that I realized that this doesn't happen in every family. It was kind of a bit strange. So in the middle, you'll see 3 ladies. Anne is the one in the middle. Her 2 sisters are on the side, and I want to share a little story about them later on. But first, just keep that in mind that these 3 are sisters. They're Ukrainian. And there's a quote that I'd like to share with you. If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And basically, the last thing that I want to say is that Anne was living under oppression in World War II during Nazi Germany. And the only reason she survived was because she could translate between German and other languages. And so she gained her freedom in Canada years later. But it didn't end for her there. And what she realized is that she's not free as long as other people are experiencing oppression. And that's why she helped my dad out. That's why she and Peter made that connection to then reach out to someone else. And you guys, being here, have so much access to resources and opportunities and education and wonderful teachers and supporters who can help you make that difference, who can help you be that partner for someone else, to show someone else that compassion and empathy. Right? And so we hope that when you go on to watch the other projects today, that you'll keep in mind that the world needs more actions of compassion and empathy, and that you could be that person.
And you can wink at them.
It's always a good way to start.
Yeah. Good job. Good job.